Hello and welcome to this segment on CTN. To learn more, please visit CIOTalkNetwork.com. And as our topic for today is trusting artificial intelligence for big business decisions. And our guest today is Pedro Domingos, who's the professor of computer science with the University of Washington. Hi, Pedro. How are you?
Hi, great. How are you?
Very good. Great to have you. And the reason we wanted to invite you is because we are talking about something which is a reality today, but it is futuristic for many. Talking about enterprise businesses or organizations, they are at all times making decisions, some small, some not as small, and in some cases they are very strategic. So the whole idea is that when we have humans using data all along, it's been so long since we have been trying to use data and not just gut to make decisions, we always thought humans are the ones who will bring that complex processing into the decision making. And there comes artificial intelligence, which is also claiming that it can either do equal or better than humans. So the goal here is to see and explore if we can trust artificial intelligence for big business decision making and not necessarily replace humans, but at least come close to it. So that said, now let's talk about the very triggers. Why is someone even looking at the need for using AI to drive such business decisions?
There's a number of reasons, but one of them is that once businesses grow beyond a certain point, they really have no choice but to use computers to help them make decisions in all sorts of things, from customers to production and whatnot. In the old days, a lot of decisions were actually made in a very rigid way using databases and so on. The benefit of AI is that those decisions can actually be made in a way that is much closer, in many cases better than what humans would do. But people often think of AI as replacing humans. In many cases, what it's really doing is replacing computer systems that were just much worse before. And in many other cases, like for example, like if it's companies Google, Amazon and whatnot, what it's really doing is making decisions that simply weren't made by anyone before because of the things that they do didn't even exist. So there's this whole spectrum of ways in which AI is being used today.
So you kind of labeled the computer systems not being able to do the job. So were they not able to churn data quickly, or they were not producing the accurate data? Because AI is not truly trying to compare itself to a regular database management system. It's a different animal, isn't it?
They are different animals. The way to think about it is the following. Let's suppose you want to figure out who are the best customers for your product. Or you have a new product and you want to figure out who to market it to. You can rely on gut feeling, and certainly there's a lot of gut feeling that goes into these things. But also what traditionally happened was that companies would rely on these broad demographic categories. Now, let's market to suburban soccer moms in Pennsylvania, and so on. The problem with this category, and this built on the database technology, but it wasn't just the database technology. The problem is that these categories are very coarse. If all that you know about somebody is that they're a suburban soccer mom in Pennsylvania, you don't actually know that much about them. Now, why were things like that? Partly it's because there wasn't any more and better data than that, and now there is. Right? All of this is really riding on the fact that we have so much data and such detailed data. And another part of that was that even if the data had been there, the computing power for the AI to use that data to make better decisions just wasn't there either. And then finally, the AI wasn't there. 20 years ago, the state of the algorithms that do the machine learning and that make the predictions and recommendations and whatnot was just much more primitive. So all of these things have progressed enormously, and we're now at the point where they're actually ready to essentially make, in many cases, the vast majority of the decisions that a business makes.
To your last response, I've got two questions here. One, you mentioned that the data wasn't available. So that means somebody went and collected the data versus machine going by itself and tried to scour the web to get that data. Because when you say that particular segment, whether they would be a good fit or not, that would require further research where some form of human intervention would be required to collect that data. That's number one. Number two, when you speak about churning that data and getting some insights out of it, that's an analytics function. So are we saying that what we are producing as data from the research where you have human and computer intervention, and subsequently the analytics that is being produced today, or even it was produced in the recent past, was not allowing us to dig deeper. If that's the gap, how are you defining artificial intelligence? Is it some machine logic which is going to somehow come up with an insight where even a computer-driven analytics would not be able to find?
Yeah, so two parts to this, right? Or at least two parts. The first one is the data. Once upon a time, the way you gathered data from people was basically by doing telephone surveys, right? By calling a few thousand people on the phone, and even that was expensive. And then this is what started in the 90s. You had maybe databases of purchases that people made, and that's when people actually started to do some real data mining. But it wasn't that much, and it was expensive to gather. These days, your cell phone is continuously collecting data value, right? Essentially, everything that you do is being captured by somebody or other. Same thing online. People are on social networks. Like, for example, when you're on the Amazon website, it's not just the products that you buy that generate data value, it's everything that you click on. So, Amazon can actually see what was the sequence of things that you did. So the data that's available, number one, is orders of magnitude greater than before. Number two, it's much cheaper to collect. In many cases, the data doesn't even have to be, it's naturally generated by people as they go about living their lives, which is done more and more online. And also, by the way, there's also a lot of data gathering from the things that people do in the physical world, like from your car and your house and so on. So this is one aspect. But the other aspect that is equally important is, as you mentioned, the machine learning, right? The data that people generate doesn't actually necessarily say anything about the future, right? This is just something that they did in the past. The whole question is, how can I use that to predict what you want in the future? How can I use the books that you bought in the past to predict the ones that you'll buy in the future, or the movies, or et cetera, et cetera? So the whole name of the game in machine learning is to generalize from your past behavior to your future behavior. And this is actually a very hard thing to do. And once upon a time, people just didn't know how to do that at all. And then, machine learning gradually over the last few decades, but then more quickly over the last decade, has become better and better at doing that, to the point where it can actually do things amazingly well, surprisingly well in many cases.
So essentially what you're saying is the fuzzy logic which artificial intelligence would use to compute and extrapolate, or rather predict, someone's behavior based on what they've done in the past is just an expanded version of multiple humans sitting together for years trying to figure the same thing out. So is the name of the game the speed or the quality of decision?
It's both, right? It's the speed and quantity and quality of the decisions. But so you mentioned fuzzy logic. Fuzzy logic is something that was used a lot in AI back in the 80s, right? AI had this heyday that people don't remember in the 80s of what are called knowledge-based systems and expert systems, which were programs that you would write down to, for example, do medical diagnosis. You would have rules that said, if this patient has this symptom and this symptom, then what she has is, the flu. And pure logic can't do this very well, which is why you need things like fuzzy logic, right? Because things are probabilistic, they're uncertain, you have to weigh information, there's more or less confidence. But the problem with that, AI failed, right? It was called the AI summer, which was followed by the AI winter, is that these systems were too brittle and they didn't know enough. There was always more knowledge that they needed to have, and their ability to deal with uncertainty was very limited. As soon as you went outside the narrow scope of what you had taught them, they failed. Fast forward to today, the big reason why AI is now really taking off is that we've replaced things like fuzzy logic and knowledge-based systems with things like machine learning, where you use things like, for example, neural networks. A neural network is essentially a simulation of a human brain that learns from experience, from data, to some degree in the same way that a human brain does. And there's a whole bunch of these. Another type of machine learning, for example, is based on simulating evolution, except that what you're doing is evolving programs instead of evolving animals or plants, but there's the same general idea of genetics and natural selection and whatnot, except it's done on the computer. So there's a whole bunch of these paradigms in machine learning that let us do things that were well beyond what you could do back in the 80s with classic AI.
So to that end, my question to you would be the change in complexity. So what you programmed it, like you mentioned neural networks and many other types of logics. At the end of the day, the logic of how it would function, how would it learn itself is still coming back to some human beings who are working at it. Now, the way the complexities are coming, or we are facing the complexities in the business world as well as in our lives, that whole set of parameters were not even being dreamed of in the past. So you're continually evolving. So how does a human brain, which in turn is supposed to program that AI logic, be able to catch up? So you can make a decision for today.
The big difference is that in traditional computer science, it's humans that write the programs. In machine learning, the computers write their own programs. The computers program themselves. This is what makes them so powerful, is that the computer is looking at data, and from that data, from the input and the desired output, it's figuring out what the program should be. So the more data you have with machine learning, the correspondingly better the programs get with no additional human work. It's a little bit like a human being, a child, right? Learns by playing around. She learns by herself. And to a large extent, this is what machine learning is able to do. So at the end of the day, the machine learning algorithms themselves were written by human beings. But a machine learning algorithm could be 100 lines of code that generates millions upon millions of lines of code that are modeling specific people in specific ways. It would have been completely hopeless to try to write that code by hand. It wouldn't have been economical. Like, for example, suppose that Amazon had to write, that the programmers at Amazon had to write a different program to model each one of their customers. Well, Amazon would go out of business. They wouldn't even find enough programmers to do it. With machine learning, they do have a model of you, but the model of you was learned from data. And now, of course, the action becomes where, and how can you learn to model what people do, and then you unleash those algorithms on a lot of data, and then you learn very detailed and very rich models that let you make decisions at a level of quality that was not achievable before.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back and continue this discussion. And Pedro, on this front, which you mentioned about the machine learning, which is a very fascinating area. Of course, the listeners would be enjoying listening to this. Now, it all still is dependent on data. That means you are expecting the human to divulge their whims and fancies and uncertainties and quirks, if you will, on a larger scale or at that very advanced level for your machine to understand. Suppose they were trying to profile me. I have to tell things way beyond what I want in a product. I have to tell them about my family, my background and everything, which I am not willing to give out. So do you think AI is going to be only as good as the data that you provide, or there is some other unique way by which it can profile me beyond, even if I am not ready to share every part of my life? Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back and explore.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise mobility management and document sharing solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/health today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/health or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CTN, CIO Talk Network, with Sanjog Aul. To learn more about our program, please visit CIOTalkNetwork.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. So, Pedro, as I mentioned, it seems like still whatever advances that AI technologies and programs and logics may have made, but it's still dependent on data. And if I'm just putting myself sitting in front of Amazon or any other way the data can be collected, but they only know my behavior in terms of how I shop versus everything else about my background and how I do other things in life and how I make decisions in other junctures of life. So with that said, you are still dependent on data, and if you don't have full profile of an individual, how could you really predict accurately enough what the person is going to be wanting next?
Yeah, so this is a crucial point. If the machine learning systems don't have data, they will not learn that much about you. And now, of course, what happens today is that data is being gathered about people in a quantity and at a pace that is astonishing. And there's a potential conflict of interest here, right? People don't necessarily want to give up some of the data that maybe without their complete knowledge, they're actually giving up. Having said that, there's a couple of important things to note here. One of them is that there's an enormous amount that can be inferred about you indirectly. So that's one of the things that machine learning is very good for, is that it can infer your shopping preferences, for example, from things that are not directly a shopping behavior. So this is what a lot of machine learning does, is from the data that is available, inferring the things that are actually relevant to the companies. And you'd be surprised also on how correlated things are. How, for example, Facebook can tell all sorts of things about your tastes from things that are maybe talking about something else. This is one aspect. The other aspect is that actually, in practice, most of the time, people are actually quite happy to give up their data in return for what they get, because what they get is better service and more personalized offerings from the companies. So in essence, what companies like Google and Facebook do, if they give you a lot of stuff completely for free, right? You don't pay for Facebook, you don't pay for Google, but what you're actually implicitly paying them with is the data that you generate that allows the advertisers to target things better for you. So at the end of the day, which is what makes things like online advertising better than things like TV advertising and whatnot, at least for some things. So at the end of the day, from that data that you generate and that they mine, everybody benefits, right? The Google and Facebook, that's what sustains their business. The advertisers are able to better target their product. And you, at the end of the day, you get advertisements that are more relevant to you and more interesting, more useful, which probably better than actually getting irrelevant one or not having Google and Facebook at all. So you're right, the data is very important and people should be more conscious of how the data is being used. And I think they should have more control over how the data is being used. But to a large extent, the interests of all the different parties are actually aligned in that.
So all the examples and the things that we discussed so far are more in a B2C setting, or you getting a consumer to act in a certain way, collect data and get them to buy, right? Understood, respected with what AI can deliver. Now let's talk about the business decision making within an organization. You could have some geographic areas you want to expand into, some new markets or products that you want to introduce, some new capabilities you would like to create or not create or build, buy or rent. And then you could have so many other strategic decisions that a business would want to make. Do you think AI has the chops to be able to deliver on this front?
Yes, in fact, the B2C applications are better known to the public because they affect our daily life. But the B2B applications are just as important, if not more important. In fact, all these companies, here's an example, Amazon. The best known use of machine learning at Amazon is the recommender system. They apparently derive a third of their business from the recommender system, and we all see the recommendations that it makes for us. But an application at Amazon that is much less known, but is also extremely important, is demand forecasting. Right? Amazon wants to predict who is going to want to buy how much of what, where, in essence, every minute of the day. And this is a big use of machine learning. They are predicting the demand for the millions of products that they sell every day, and they continuously trying to come up with better machine learning algorithms to do this. They've gotten so good at this that one thing that Amazon is now doing trials with is what they call predictive delivery. Predictive delivery is when Amazon sends you something to buy before you order it, so that you will have it minute after you've ordered it. And this is one of those things that sounds like science fiction, but it's actually not. and they don't reveal the details of this, my guess is that they know that, for example, in a certain neighborhood, someone or other is going to want to buy Harry Potter, the first book, for example. They may not know that it's exactly you, but they know that somebody will, so they put it on the truck. And then by the time that truck gets there, like the order will have been placed, and then they can immediately deliver it to the person. They actually say that if you order something, if you receive something that you didn't order, then you can actually have it for free. So that's actually how confident that they are, that they can predict demand. And the same thing is true. The thing that is most remarkable about the companies that use a lot of machine learning is that they don't just use it for one thing. They use it in every nook and cranny of what they do. So, for example, another important use of machine learning that people don't see is that companies like Google and Microsoft and Amazon, they use machine learning to optimize their data centers. Right? So they have these huge server farms that cost a lot of money and spend a lot of energy, and they continuously optimize them to try and minimize, for example, the energy consumption, and which is a huge cost. And they can do this very successfully to the point where they can, for example, reduce the energy consumption by knowing what to turn on and what to turn off at what times by close to a half. And there are many more examples of things like this. And by the way, I've been using mostly examples of these like tech companies, Google and Facebook and Amazon, and machine learning is penetrating different industries at different rates. But a lot of important examples of the use of machine learning are in industries that do not have anything to do with tech. They're in finance, they're in telecoms, they're in retail, and they're in medicine and health and so on.
So with all the responses or all the examples that you gave, so I understood where you took a number of companies which are a little more advanced, or maybe they have some specific stories to tell, and it's penetrating many industries. Most of these examples that you shared are transactional, or are related to transactions or operational optimization. So if we were to roll this up or maybe go at a level higher upstream, there are some decisions to be made about, like I mentioned, which geography should this business expand into, or which markets to tap. So you got a CEO with a bunch of consulting firms supporting him or her, and then also their staff or like the senior executives who are all working, strategizing, sitting in a room and trying to figure this out. Would you think AI has a place for or place in improving or replacing the decision making which is happening in a boardroom and deliver a better result?
Yes, definitely. So AI is used a lot for these things today. For the most part, it's in support of the humans to make the final decision. There are cases, however, where the AI itself makes the final decision. Or something that is very common is for the AI to make the triage among the thousands of things that the company could do to just maybe 10 or 20 that we need to consider carefully. So one very good example of this, and actually one of the original killer apps of machine learning, is in finance, is you have 3,000 neural networks, each from modeling a stock in the Russell 3000. And what the machine learning does is it takes out of the 3,000 stocks, the 20 that are good for human analysts to look at. And then the humans out of those, they pick the ones that they actually are going to invest, or maybe the ones that they held and are going to sell. But there are also some hedge funds that are completely run by machine learning. So the machine learning actually puts the buy and sell orders in. And of course, things like high-frequency trading are almost entirely done by machine learning because they have to be, right? Because no human can function that fast. But then there's also things like, for example, there's a venture capital firm that has actually named a learning algorithm to its board of directors. So it has 7 directors that vote on investment decisions and on what firms to invest in. And one of those is actually an algorithm. It has as much of a vote as the human does. And I can easily see if this works out well, the algorithm's having more and more votes on the board until maybe they have a majority or they have all the votes. And to give another example that is very consequential, a lot of hiring decisions and promotion decisions these days are made by machine learning algorithms. Companies get thousands and thousands of resumes and applications, and it's the machine learning that actually sifts through them to find the more promising candidates. Again, typically, the machine learning doesn't make the final decision, but from 10,000 candidates, it selects maybe the 50 that the firm is going to look at. So most of the selection is actually done by machine learning. And interestingly, this has been studied, and people often prefer this because they find that the algorithm is fair. The algorithm tends to focus on just the things that really are relevant as opposed to things that aren't relevant or the preconceptions that the human being has. A famous example of this, of course, is Moneyball, right? It's selecting baseball players for a team. In fact, people do it in every sport now. The human scouts used to use all sorts of things that they thought were meaningful but weren't. And then using this kind of statistical learning, what the Oakland A's found, they were the pioneers of this, was that you could actually do very well at collecting the right individuals and the right combination of individuals, like the player that they were missing to complete their team, they could select using machine learning and then pay a much lower price for them. So the same kind of thing is happening in the job market at large today. If you're a company with a subscription to LinkedIn, one of the things that LinkedIn will do for you is mine the resumes of the people who are on LinkedIn for the people who are likely good candidates for the jobs that you have. So this is something that happens on a routine basis today. So these are a couple of examples of how machine learning is being used for the higher level decisions in companies today.
Let's take a quick break, listeners, and come right back and talk about why on earth then we even need to have humans at a leadership position. If AI is promising the outcome, which could incrementally or significantly better than an individual, so that means you could have a CEO, which is an algorithm. You, as you already mentioned, a board of directors could have a bunch of algorithms, and soon you are having any and every decision being made within an organization by a set of software algorithm which has got support from machine learning, and you just have worker bees. Is that what we are looking at as a future for an enterprise? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network.
Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/health today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/health or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management and Document Sharing Solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
You are listening to CTN, CIO Talk Network with Sanjog Aul. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. So, Pedro, you mentioned and claimed that CEOs, board of directors, any of the senior executives in an organization could effectively be replaced by an algorithm. It's a matter of time. Then what are humans going to do in an enterprise?
No, actually, I wouldn't say that in things like this. I can imagine a CEO that's an algorithm, and for all I know, there's probably some clever startup somewhere that already has something like this. But the truth is, for 99.9% of companies out there, the CEO isn't going to be replaced by an algorithm anytime soon, and nor are the CXOs, nor are the board members. And the reason is very simple, is that the algorithms are very good at some things today, and in fact, at some things they are way better than humans are, but there are also many things at which humans are much better than the algorithm, and we need both. Maybe in the very long term, computers will become better than humans at everything, but that's going to take a while. For the foreseeable future, what we're going to need is a very close combination of people and computers doing most things. And in fact, the people who will be successful are the ones who know how to use computers to complement what they do. Automation is a little bit like having a horse, right? If you have a horse, you don't try to outrun it. You ride the horse. And as a result of which you can go farther. Here's an example. Chess, right? At one point, Deep Blue beat Kasparov's, and now chess programs are the world champions, right? Computers play the best chess in the world, right? Absolutely wrong. The best chess players in the world today are not computers. They are what it's called in the community centaurs. A centaur, right, is a mythical creature with half man, half horse, but in this case, it's half man, half computer. The best chess players in the world today are a team of a human and a computer, because the human can see things that the computer can't. And then the computer can also do a lot of work that is completely beyond what the human unnative would do. And I think this thing that happens in chess, that a combination of human and machine does better than just a machine, is going to be the pattern in the great majority of occupation. And that's really how people should be thinking in terms of is, the best way to protect your job from automation is to automate it yourself. You're like, how can I automate the parts of my job that can be done by a computer that are probably more routine? And then I can maybe do the more interesting ones and get to do more of the stuff that I wish I had time to do all along. So, for example, anything that is routine, that is structured, that has fairly clear rules, the computer can probably do it. The things that involve integrating a lot of information, that involve like a broader type of reasoning, computers can't do those kinds of things. And by the way, another thing that people often find very surprising, and that we in this field find very surprising, is that people used to think that, oh yeah, computers are going to automate the blue-collar jobs, and then the white-collar ones will be the harder ones to automate. This is actually not the case. Some blue-collar jobs are easy to automate, but some are hard. The construction worker is hard to automate, right? We don't have robots that can walk around the construction site without tripping over. On the other hand, there are many white-collar jobs like financial advisor or direct marketer that are and in fact increasingly are being replaced by computers. So the question is not so much white-collar versus blue-collar as routine versus non-routine, if you will.
So if you were to qualify and say, okay, this is where AI is very good at as we see it today, and this is where humans should be proud of in terms of where they are even better than the most sophisticated AI that exists.
I would say that, and again, it's important to realize that the frontier between what is best done by algorithms and what is best done by people is continuously shifting, right? So it doesn't stay in the same place. But I would say, like going back to the hedge fund example, what the computers can do that the people can't do very well is that it can look at thousands of stocks very quickly, or in the case of consumers, at millions of consumers. It can just do things on a scale that people can't. Having said that, the extent to which Amazon knows a customer, or to which one of these algorithms knows a company that might be something different, is very limited. It's not very deep, right? It's based on really, for each individual customer, not that much information, or for each company, not that much information. And also what it's missing is often the context. So what the human beings in the hedge fund can do that a computer can't is that they can take a huge variety of other factors into account that the computer doesn't even know exist. They understand politics, they understand what's happening globally in between countries and regulation and so on and so forth. There's all this, there's this whole pool of things that the algorithms just have no idea about, and it's the human beings that have an idea about that.
So you're saying essentially, so you use the churning part, the effective way of churning, and then machine learning portion of it, but leaving the softer, the human-specific issues like politics, like change of behavior, like regime changes or whatever, and having basically looking at that fuzzy side of how humans are able to connect the dots, that still is a privilege of humans versus coming to machines.
Yeah, the fuzzy side, and I might say more the higher level thing. What machine learning algorithms typically do in one of these companies that's very automated, for example, Google is an example, is, or Amazon or Facebook, they make the day-to-day decisions, the point-by-point decisions. Remember, every time you see an ad on Facebook, on Google or Facebook actually, there was an option to decide what to put there. And there were machine learning algorithms predicting what was the probability of each of the candidate ads to be clicked on. So these millions or even billions of continuous decisions about what to do, they're made by machines. But what the humans are doing is a very important part, which is they fear this. at a higher level. So the captain of the ship is still a human, right? The human beings into the algorithms can't say, oh, here's the big market that we should head into next. That type of decision can't really be made by learning algorithms. They don't know or understand enough to do that. But they can gather a lot of data, right? And you can make those, at the end of the day, right? There are some things for which data can replace insight and intuition, but there are things for which it can't. And for those things, those decisions are still being made by humans. So they do the higher level steering, and the computers, somebody I know says that machine learning is like having an army of ants. Right? Each ant by itself is not very powerful, but you have a lot of them together being used for all these different things, and it adds up to a lot. But these individual things are still fairly small. The really big ones, for the most part, are still the province of humans.
So let's take examples of the type of business decisions that someone would make. And in terms of the approach or the quality of those decisions, sometimes those decisions in an enterprise could be done fast, or in the sense you want to do it like yesterday, if that's what's possible, or you would do it in small incremental type of decisions for short, mid, or long term. You could even make some decisions to say, you know what, let's get started on this journey, and we will play it by the ear and figure out as we go. Now, this is also being done by people using partly their gut and some data. Do you think such decision making, which doesn't have really set boundaries or set parameters, are good candidates? And if you put AI, they will do a better job at it?
What happened a lot today with this type of decision is that humans will generate the candidate things to do. But then it's not played by ear, is that it gets tried out and measured, and the machine learning figures out whether this works or not. So something that is used a lot today is what are called A/B tests, right? So an A/B test is the company is currently doing things one way, and then somebody has the idea of trying things the A way, and then somebody thinks of doing things the B way. And now what we do is we just try them both online. We continue to do A as before, but then we pick out random 100,000 customers, and we try the B way on those, and we see if the results are better. These types of A/B tests are being done continuously by the thousand every day by these companies. So you've participated in thousands of A/B tests, yet you just don't know, you're not aware of it. And some of these A/B tests can be for large things like let us start offering this new product, or let us go into this market. More commonly, however, they are for things that are smaller, but they can make a lot of difference. So for example, Google at one point did an A/B test for what shade of blue to paint the links on the ad. They tried 50 different shades of blue for the links that you can click on the ad. This was a very straightforward thing to do for Google. And as a result, they fixed the shade of blue that made people most likely to click on it. And as a result of it, they are now making $200 million a year more. $200 million is not a large percentage of the money that they make, which is, I don't know, in the tens of billions. But considering that it's probably the work of one person over a week, and this is giving a return of $200 million, it's an amazing result for a simple A/B test. And again, these kinds of A/B tests are being done for all sorts of things all the time by a lot of different companies.
And this is very fascinating the way you say. So now coming to those areas where you mentioned that humans can see the politics across countries or across regimes and things which machine learning is yet not able to do. So are we trying to go in that direction that you can completely remove the reasons why a human should make any decision?
Yes, for example, hedge funds these days are using things like mining Twitter data to figure out what I think that people are talking about and how those things might affect stocks or the fate of particular companies. So people are enormously creative in the way that they can use machine learning, and more. So again, information about people's sentiment and about what's happening in politics used to be hard to come by, but now there's things like Twitter that you can mine, or there's things like satellite data, for example. There's hedge funds that use satellite images of the parking lots of the Walmarts of this world to see how good the business is, right? Are there a lot of cars parked in the parking lot? So I think increasingly more and more of this information that was not acceptable to algorithms is accessible, and people will develop the algorithms to make use of it. But then what happens is that the human beings go up one level, right? They can now, based on these things, still make decisions that the algorithms wouldn't be able to. I think eventually to have algorithms that do everything that humans can, we're just going to need really deep breakthroughs in AI that haven't happened yet. So the state of the art in AI is far beyond what it was 50 years ago. So in my book, The Master Algorithm, I talk about the different types of machine learning that exist and what they can do. There are these 5 major paradigms that are called the 5 types of machine learning. But the truth is, each of these paradigms can do some things very well. One of them is neural network. Another one is evolution. Another one is basically automating the scientific method to have something like the equivalent of a scientist, but automated. Another one is reasoning by analogy. But each of these can only do something. And my feeling is that at the end of the day, what we're going to need is something like a grand unified theory of machine learning, in the same way that the standard model is the grand unified theory of physics, to actually have in one system all the intelligence that human beings have. And I think once we have that, I think it is possible that the majority of jobs will wind up being done by computers. And people vary a lot in their estimate of how far along that road we are. My personal opinion is that yes, we've come 1,000 miles, but there's 1,000,000 more miles to go. So we're still quite a distance from it. But these days, because machine learning is so economically important, the amount of investment that is being done is enormous. So there's more progress in machine learning happening in 1 year today than used to happen in a decade. So even though we have 1,000,000 more miles to go, it might not take a huge amount of time to get there, but it'll probably still be in the decades. But the truth is, nobody knows for sure, right? Progress in science and technology is not linear. Often you make very rapid progress, and we are making very rapid progress in AI today. But then you have these long periods of slow progress, and who knows what's going to happen. All we can tell is that people are going to be making progress, and companies are going to be investing in this. But exactly what will happen when is very hard to predict.
Let's take a quick break, listeners, and we'll be right back after the break and talk about a leadership. So someone who makes good decision and for the business may not really be as good as they need to be with people and be able to gain credibility through what they do. How do they develop people? Now, I'm going on the softer side of what makes a good leader. Now, in this case, when we're talking in enterprise context, we are making decisions, but then also we have to work on culture, also take care of the people so that they follow you as you come up with a decision so that it gets adopted and you realize the dream. With all of that, do you think AI has a role to play? Or if AI is going to take the credit for even be able to do that, then are we proposing the end of organizational leadership? Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back.
The business community's first choice in Internet Talk Radio. Voice America Business Network.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise mobility management and document sharing solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/health today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/health or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CTN, CIO Talk Network with Sanjog Aul. Now, back to the show.
welcome back. So, Pedro, making decisions, whether they are good or bad, developing culture, getting to know people and have them follow you is what makes a leader. So, if at each juncture, if the leader is not gaining credibility, there will be a problem in getting the decisions which otherwise could have been made by humans or by AI to get adopted and realize the very dream that you're chasing. So with that said, do you think AI is proposing or is it leading us to a stage where most decisions, which are of course the people who are working within the organizations are aware of, is being done by or are being made by some machine learning, more and more so, and then which is less and less emotional, which is less and less human? Do you think that's going to undermine or eliminate or destroy, not rather eliminate, but destroy or undermine the organizational leadership, that people look up to other people and not to an algorithm?
I would say that what's going to happen is that people will trust their leaders more if the leaders made their decisions with the help of AI and machine learning than if they didn't. It's one thing to say, I made decisions based on my gut instinct. It's another thing to say, I made decisions based on this data and based on these results. And a lot of the more data-based companies, what happens, it's not that the leadership has become unimportant. Look at Amazon, right? Jeff Bezos is extremely important at Amazon. Part of what he gives to Amazon is this culture of being very data-driven, of saying, we have this disagreement about what to do. Let the data decide. Let's go out and try things out in the real world. So I think it'll be more the other way around, is that increasingly, the leaders that just make their decisions based on gut feeling will have less credibility. The leaders that make their decisions based on analysis of data and so on will have more credibility. Having said that, some decisions will be made by algorithms, and the experience so far seems to be that people at first are resistant to that, right? People don't like the idea of algorithms making decisions for them, and they tend to hold algorithms to an impossibly high standard. So a human being was doing a job, they were good 80% of the time, but an algorithm will not be adopted unless it's good 100% of the time, right? So people often have these unrealistic expectations for algorithms. But then what happens as they start to use the algorithm is that they quickly see that, oh, wow, this algorithm actually makes very good decisions, and then they actually like it. So for example, there was a survey not long ago where they asked people, would you prefer to have a machine as your boss? And you would think that the vast majority of people would say absolutely no. And actually, it turns out a large number of people said yes. And the thing is that if you have a great boss, then you don't want a machine instead of the boss. But if your boss sucks, or some bosses do sucks, then a machine maybe is actually better. And when they ask people why is it, they would say the machine will make decisions more consistently. And it will be fairer. I'll be less dependent on their good and bad moods because it won't have good and bad moods. And that will have a clearer picture of what it is that I need to do to perform well. People want to know what is good versus bad performance. And then often, with algorithms, it's very clear. It's actually given explicitly to people what are the parameters. And they actually feel more comfortable doing that. Mark Andreessen, who was the founder of Netscape and is also a famous venture capitalist these days, he says that in the future, there'll be two kinds of jobs. There'll be the jobs where you tell a computer what to do, and there'll be jobs where a computer tells you what to do. And I think this captures something. It's not necessarily the case that being told what to do by a computer is a bad thing. Certainly having a computer doing the things that you tell it to can make your life a lot easier than having to have those things being done by people and having to explain by people what you need to do and whatnot. But I actually think that the deeper reality is that all of us already are doing a mix of telling computers what to do and being told what to do by them. So for example, let's say you want to go on a date, right? You can use a dating site to find a date, right? Your decision to go on, the decision to go there was yours, but then the dates are selected for you by the site. And then you decide to go to a restaurant, but then Yelp is actually what selects the restaurants to go to. And then you drive there, and then it's the car's GPS system that figures out the route to take. So in some sense, you are following its instructions, that you're just doing the driving. But then when you're doing the driving, there's all these systems in the computer. The car is a bunch of computers that are basically helping you drive where you want to go. So there's a really intricate mesh of things that are done by the human and things that are done by the computer. But at the high level, the control is in your hands, right? At the end of the day, the computers are just extensions of us, and they're just there to do what we want them to do. And it's for us to figure out what it is that we want to do.
So one last question I have for you, 30 seconds. What do you think should be the change in mindset of the leaders, and how do they get the people to look at AI a little differently. Like after this show, many people should look at it differently. But otherwise, in organizations, what do you want leaders to do so that AI could be introduced with people trusting it?
I think the key idea is that an organization with AI is different from a traditional organization. It's more flexible, it's more adaptable, it can move more quickly. Everybody has more visibility into the company. So what really AI can do for a company is to make its intelligence more than the sum of the parts. Today, the intelligence of a large organization is less than the sum of the parts because people can only communicate so much and the organization doesn't know what it knows. With AI, you can actually have the intelligence of the whole be greater than the intelligence of the parts. And this is, I think, what leaders want to be driving. And there's going to be a new type of company in the 21st century, which we already see some of them becoming. And it's the job very much of the leaders of the company to drive their companies in that direction.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, I'd really like to thank you, Pedro. You really opened some eyes today, giving people perspective of how AI can actually be working shoulder to shoulder with humans to create value. So it is important for leaders to, of course, convey this message to their people that if you introduce AI into an organization, it'll be of benefit to them and the organization and thus get a better adoption and get people to trust AI as part of their lives. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me.
And listeners, hope you enjoyed this fascinating conversation. Like us on Facebook, search for CTN, and please sure to follow us on Twitter and join our LinkedIn community. Thank you again for listening to this segment on CTN. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.